Deep in the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of a remote island that most people had never heard of, sits a city that defies explanation. 92 artificial islands constructed from massive basalt columns, each weighing up to 50 tons, stacked like enormous Lincoln logs to create walls, temples, and tombs rising from the coral reefs. No mortar, no concrete, just precisely fitted stones forming a megalithic metropolis that covers 11 square miles of shallow lagoon. This is Nan Madol, and nobody can explain how it was built, who had the power to organize its construction, or why it was suddenly abandoned 700 years ago, left to slowly sink back into the sea. The locals call it the ruins of heaven. The first Europeans to see it called it the Venice of the Pacific. But those names don't capture the strangeness of this place. Imagine approaching by boat as the morning mist lifts off the water. You're gliding through narrow canals between walls made of hexagonal basalt columns stacked horizontally, each piece fitting perfectly with the next. These aren't small stones. These are massive prismatic logs of volcanic rock, some over 20 feet long, arranged in crisscross patterns that would make modern engineers nervous. And they've been standing here, resisting typhoons and earthquakes, for over 800 years. Nan Madol sits off the eastern shore of Pohnpei, one of the Caroline Islands in Micronesia. The entire complex was built on a coral reef flat, meaning the builders had to first create a foundation in the shallow lagoon, then transport and stack millions of tons of basalt to construct their artificial islands. The scale is staggering. Estimates suggest that the total weight of the basalt used in construction could be as much as 750,000 metric tons. That's comparable to the Great Pyramid of Giza, except instead of building on solid ground in a desert, they built on water, using a coral reef as their foundation. The construction technique is unique. The builders use columnar basalt, a type of volcanic rock that naturally forms hexagonal columns as it cools. Picture Devil's Tower in Wyoming or the Giant's Causeway in Ireland. But instead of leaving these formations where nature made them, the people of Nan Madol quarried them, transported them across water, and stacked them to create walls sometimes 40 feet high. The precision is remarkable. No mortar was used, yet the walls have survived centuries of tropical storms. The basalt columns were stacked in an alternating header and stretcher pattern, creating a stable structure that could flex slightly during earthquakes without collapsing. So who built this impossible city? According to the archaeological evidence, construction began around 1200 CE and continued for about 300 years, reaching its peak around 1500 CE. This was the ceremonial and political center of the Saudeleur Dynasty, a line of rulers who controlled Pohnpei and surrounding islands. But here's where history blends into legend, because the oral traditions tell a very different story about Nan Madol's origins. The legends speak of twin sorcerers named Olisipa and Olisopa who arrived from the west, searching for a place to build an altar to the god of agriculture. They tried several locations on Pohnpei, but weren't satisfied. Then they used their magical powers to make the basalt stones fly through the air and arrange themselves into the structures of Nan Madol. According to the stories, these sorcerer kings could command a dragon to help move the stones, and they built the city in a single night using supernatural forces. Now, obviously we have to take that with a grain of salt. But here's what's interesting. These legends exist because nobody in living memory actually knows how Nan Madol was built. By the time European explorers arrived in the 1800s, the city had already been abandoned for centuries, and the local population had no detailed knowledge of construction methods. The technology had been lost. The organizational systems that allowed the mobilization of enough labor to move 750,000 tons of rock had vanished. The city stood as a mystery even to the descendants of the people who built it. The practical questions are enormous. Where did all the basalt come from? Researchers have identified several quarry sites on Pohnpei, some over 10 miles away from Nan Madol. These stones weigh between 5 and 50 tons each. How are they transported? There's no evidence of wheels or draft animals on Pohnpei. The most likely method is that they were moved on rafts or by floating them to the shallow lagoons. But even that presents problems. Basalt is dense. Making it float requires careful calculation and probably some kind of outrigger system to prevent the rafts from capsizing. Then there's the question of precision. When you look closely at the walls, you see that the hexagonal columns are fitted together with incredible accuracy. The builders clearly selected specific pieces for specific positions, rotating them and testing the fit until they locked together properly. This wasn't random stacking. This was deliberate engineering by people who understood structural stability, weight distribution, and the behavior of materials under stress. The city is divided into two main areas. The residential area, called Pohnpei, contains the ruins of dwelling compounds where the nobility and priests lived. The mortuary area, called Micronesia, contains the tombs and most sacred structures. The largest and most impressive structure is Nan Madol's, a massive compound with walls over 25 feet high surrounding a central tomb. This was the burial place of the Saudeleur rulers, and it remains one of the most imposing examples of prehistoric Pacific Island architecture. Walking through Nan Madol today is an otherworldly experience. Most of the islands are overgrown with mangroves and tropical vegetation. The canals that once carried boats between the artificial islands are still navigable at high tide, creating an eerie maze of waterways between crumbling stone walls. You can see where the ocean is slowly reclaiming the city. Some walls have collapsed, spilling basalt columns into the lagoon. Coral grows on the submerged stones. Fish swim through what were once courtyards and temples, but despite the decay, the overall structure remains intact enough to show how sophisticated the urban planning was. The islands were organized by function, some for administration, some for food preparation, some for canoe construction, others for religious ceremonies. There were specific islands for the priests, for the warriors, for craftsmen. This was a highly stratified society with clear divisions between social classes, all centered around the religious and political authority of the Saudeleur Dynasty. The Saudeleur were absolute rulers, considered semi-divine. They controlled not just Pohnpei, but several surrounding islands, creating what was essentially Micronesia's first centralized state. They demanded tribute, organized massive labor projects, and enforced strict social hierarchies. The construction of Nan Madol itself was probably a demonstration of their power, a way of showing that they could command enough resources and labor to literally reshape the landscape. But here's the fascinating part. The Saudeleur Dynasty eventually collapsed. Around 1500 CE, possibly earlier, a warrior named Isoclecal led an invasion from Kosrae, another Caroline island. According to legend, Isoclecal was the son of the thunder god, sent to overthrow the increasingly tyrannical Saudeleur rulers. The invasion succeeded. The last Saudeleur fled or was killed, and Isoclecal established a new ruling system based on district chiefs rather than centralized control. After the fall of the Saudeleur, Nan Madol was gradually abandoned. Without the centralized authority to maintain it, the city fell into disrepair. The new rulers preferred to live on the main island of Pohnpei rather than the artificial islands of the lagoon. By the time European explorers arrived, Nan Madol was already a ruin, remembered in legends but no longer occupied. The abandonment raises interesting questions. Why didn't subsequent rulers continue to use such an impressive complex? Some researchers suggest that Nan Madol may have become associated with the unpopular Saudeleur regime, making it politically unwise to occupy. Others point to practical problems. Maintaining a city built on coral reefs requires constant effort, and without a strong central authority to organize that maintenance, the city would quickly become unlivable. There are also environmental theories. Pohnpei is one of the wettest places on Earth, receiving over 300 inches of rain per year. The constant moisture, combined with poor drainage on the artificial islands, would have created sanitation problems. Mosquitoes breeding in the stagnant canal water could spread diseases. The coral foundation itself may have been gradually subsiding, causing structural problems that made the city increasingly dangerous to inhabit. Modern archaeology at Nan Madol faces significant challenges. The site is remote, accessible only by boat, in a region with limited infrastructure and funding for research. The tropical climate is brutal on both researchers and equipment. Much of the site is underwater or overgrown with dense vegetation. Excavation is complicated by the fact that any digging immediately fills with water from the surrounding lagoon. Despite these challenges, ongoing research continues to reveal new information. Recent studies using radiocarbon dating, analysis of pottery fragments, and examination of coral growth patterns on the stones have helped refine our understanding of when different parts of the city were built and occupied. Researchers have also begun using LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar to map the full extent of the complex, including structures that are completely buried or submerged. One of the most intriguing recent discoveries is evidence that Nan Madol may have been part of a broader network of Pacific Island chiefdoms engaged in long-distance trade and cultural exchange. Artifacts found at the site include shell ornaments from islands hundreds of miles away, suggesting that the Saudeleur Dynasty was connected to a wider world than previously thought. The site also raises broader questions about island societies and megalithic construction. How do cultures without written language, metal tools, or wheels manage to create such impressive architecture? The answer seems to be a combination of factors: sophisticated knowledge of materials and engineering, highly organized social structures capable of mobilizing large labor forces, and probably most importantly, time. These weren't projects completed in a few years. These were multi-generational efforts, with knowledge and techniques passed down from master builders to apprentices over centuries. Nan Madol reminds us that impressive technology doesn't always look the way we expect. There are no complex machines here, no evidence of advanced metallurgy or mathematics. What there is instead is a deep understanding of local materials, patient observation of how structures behave under stress, and the organizational capability to coordinate thousands of workers over many decades. That's technology, too, just expressed in a different way than we're used to seeing. Today, Nan Madol is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized as an outstanding example of Pacific Island architecture and a testament to the engineering capabilities of pre-industrial societies. But it's also on the list of endangered sites. Rising sea levels, increased storm intensity due to climate change, and the natural decay of the coral reef foundation all threaten the long-term survival of the complex. Without significant conservation efforts, much of Nan Madol could collapse or be swallowed by the ocean within the next century. There's a poetic tragedy in that. The city was built to demonstrate eternal power, to create a monument that would last forever. The Saudeleur rulers wanted to be remembered as gods. Instead, their city is slowly sinking back into the sea, just as mysterious to us as it was to the people who found abandoned 700 years ago. The legends of flying stones and dragon help us persist because the real story, the story of how human beings accomplished this incredible feat of engineering, was lost to time. Standing among the ruins of Nan Madol, you can't help but feel the weight of that lost knowledge. Somewhere in the Pacific, on a remote island, people figure out how to build a city on water using nothing but stone and human ingenuity. They created something that still impresses engineers today. And then that knowledge vanished, leaving us with only the stones and the stories, both slowly being reclaimed by the ocean that surrounds them.